The Corps of Discovery had now been on their journey for over a year. The explorers were very good friends with one another and had learned to depend on one another. One day, John Shields and George Shannon went ahead of the others in a pirogue. John Shields was the blacksmith, and he knew his way around outdoors. George Shannon was smart and friendly. Shields and Shannon paddled up the river, talking over the exciting events that they had gone through so far. "Well," Private Shannon said, "no one can complain that it has been dull." Dull means boring. No one can say that this expedition has been boring, because it hasn't been boring at all. No sooner were those words out of his mouth than the tip of their pirogue came around a bend in the river, and they saw a sight that caused them to stop paddling for a moment. Up ahead, the Missouri River split into two wide rivers. One of the two rivers was the Missouri, and the other was not. It was impossible to tell which one was the Missouri River. "Which river is the Missouri?" Shannon asked. "The Missouri River is the one the captains think can carry us farther west." "I don't know," Shields replied, "and I don't think the captains will know either. We've passed the part of the river our Native American friends told us about, and none of them has seen this part of the country before." Soon the other boats arrived. Going ashore, Lewis and Clark walked ahead and inspected the two rivers. Clark said, "If we take the wrong river, it may turn too cold for us to travel by the time we're ready to start from here again." Native Americans told them that the Missouri River ended in the Rocky Mountains. Lewis and Clark knew that they would have to travel by land instead of by water to cross the mountains. Because they wouldn't be able to cross the mountains on a river, that meant there was no all-water route to the Pacific Ocean. "We need to find the Shoshone people up ahead so we can buy horses from them. But first they would have to continue along the Missouri River to the Rocky Mountains." Lewis suggested, "The last Native Americans we talked to said that there was a huge waterfall up ahead on the Missouri River. We need to find that waterfall. Take some men along the South Fork, Clark, and I'll try the North. If one of us finds it, that person will know he's on the correct river. We'll meet back here in a few days to see which group has found the waterfall." Unfortunately, when they met back up after a few days, neither group had found the waterfall. Lewis had another idea. He decided to try looking for the waterfall by land, rather than following one of the two rivers. Lewis and his men walked for 2 days before they heard what Lewis later described as the agreeable sound of falling water. Following the sound, they came to not just one waterfall, but a whole series of great waterfalls. This was it. They could now figure out which of the two rivers was the Missouri River. Lewis sent a man back for the rest of the party. When Clark and the rest arrived at the great waterfalls, however, they found Lewis and his men burying the keelboat and some of their supplies for the trip back. "It's too heavy," Lewis explained. "We need to carry the boats around the waterfalls in order to continue up the Missouri River." Finally, after 11 days of hard work, they left the great waterfalls behind. It was a difficult journey. The river was becoming harder to follow as it narrowed and filled with rocks. On the other hand, Sacagawea was closer to the area where she had lived with the Shoshone. She was now able to guide the Corps of Discovery better because she started to recognize the land where she had lived as a child. The more places she recognized, the more confidently she guided them. Sacagawea became more certain of which way to go as she got closer to the Shoshone lands where she used to live. In August of 1805, Lewis told Clark, "I will take 3 men ahead on foot instead of following this winding river. If we find the Shoshone, we'll return with horses. We can use the horses to cross the mountains. Then we can look for the other river we think flows down from the mountains all the way to the Pacific Ocean." A few days later, Lewis and his men were crossing a meadow when they spied or saw a Shoshone horseman up ahead. Unfortunately, when he saw Lewis and his men, the Shoshone horseman turned and rode away. The four men kept looking for the Shoshone. A few days later, they reached the Rocky Mountains, which, since the Louisiana Purchase, formed the western edge of the United States. The next afternoon, they came upon an old Shoshone woman gathering wood for a fire. Smiling, Lewis said in English, "We are friends." She did not know English, but she understood when Lewis smiled that he was friendly. She led the four travelers to her village and introduced Lewis to the chief. The Shoshone had plenty of horses, but the Shoshone chief explained with sign language that the Shoshone did not have much food to share. 2 days later, Clark and the rest of the expedition arrived with Sacagawea. Now Sacagawea could translate the chief's words. When Sacagawea translated, she turned the chief's words in the Shoshone language into English so that Lewis and Clark could understand what the chief said. Sacagawea joined Lewis, Clark, and the chief in his cabin. It was dark. The only light was from the fire. With her help, the chief told the captains that his people did not know the way to the ocean, but that a river did run down to it, and that another tribe, the Nez Perce, could lead the party to the river. As she translated this, Sacagawea suddenly cried out. In the shadows of the chief's home, she had not seen his face clearly. Now, as he turned more toward the light, she recognized him. The chief was Sacagawea's brother. She threw her arms around him and in a rush of words explained who she was. What a joyful surprise this was for everyone. Sacagawea and her brother had not seen each other in many years. In all the Shoshone lands, Lewis had stumbled into the village of Sacagawea's brother. Now the chief said, "My sister, I will help you and your friends get all the horses, supplies, and guides you will need in order to complete your journey."